So we do have a term A that we talk about in this unit. Instead of the concentration of A, it's activity. And so activity here, the decay rate is also called activity, capital A. And so this is equal to the change in the number of nuclei, or our decay constant times the number of nuclei. And people will often talk about the activity of particular radioactive compounds. So because activity is proportional to the number of nuclei, you can also take this expression and write it as this expression. So you can have either the number of nuclei equal the original number of nuclei, e to the kt, or you can do it in terms of activity, that the activity at some time is equal to the original activity, e to the minus kt. So all of these equations can be rewritten in this way. So now let's talk a minute about units. That was, I need to have that off. I can't concentrate with it beeping at me. All right, so the activity for units, the new activity is BQ, becquerel. I'm not actually, it's named after a French person, so Henry was his first name, and my French pronunciation is not very good. This is the current unit. It's equal to 1 radioactive disintegration per second. The older unit, which you may be familiar with, is called the Curie, and that is 3.7 times 10 to the 10th disintegrations per second. Does anyone want to guess where the Curie unit, who that was named after?
Pierre Curie.
Which one?
Pierre.
Marie? No, it was named after her husband, actually, Pierre Curie. And I actually always assume, because Marie is actually more famous than her husband. But Marie Curie won 2 Nobel Prizes, so we shouldn't feel too sorry for her. Her husband shared the first Nobel Prize with her in, I think it's 1903. But then in 1906, he was killed in a road accident, run over by something as crossing the street. So he did not share the second Nobel Prize, because by the time that came around, about 1911, he had passed away. So at first we had the Curie, but then that turned out to be a really big number. And so when you were talking about sort of safe units for workers to be exposed to, if they were being exposed to things 10 to the 10th, that really isn't very, very healthy. So they wanted to have a sort of a much smaller unit. And so I guess that Marie Curie at that point was talked about whether how her husband would feel about having the Curie not being the standard unit. But I guess she was okay with it, because if we had kept that same unit, then people would have been using it, and it would have had to have been a really, really small number, because it was sort of picked to be set up to something that was too large. And she didn't want her husband's name apparently associated with a sort of an infinitesimally small quantity of something. So the Curie was sort of done away with, and Henry Becquerel, who was one of the people who discovered radioactivity and shared that first Nobel Prize, had the unit named after him. And I always ask freshman chemistry class that as they go through MIT, if they ever discover a unit that is named after a female scientist, to please come back and let me know. This was the one I thought was named after a female scientist, but as it turns out, it was actually Pierre Curie. So if you hear of any, please let me know for future reference. So the current unit you'll be using is BQ here for radioactivity.